When the weather and the water start to warm up, that can only mean one thing. It's early summer trout fishing. So today, let's go through the top 10 early summer trout fishing tips to help you catch more trout. What is up, Outdoor Mavericks? Welcome back to the channel and the latest trout fishing tips video where we're going to cover everything early summer trout fishing. Now, the transition from spring trout fishing into summer trout fishing can be different wherever you are in the country, but that early summer time frame right before the weather gets super hot can be the most productive and produce the best trout fishing bites of the year. And that's a huge reason why I love the early summer season. You get into some bigger fish and some big old bites, especially those big trophy fish that have been getting bigger all spring and are looking for a hungry meal. And if you're looking to capitalize on that early summer big trout bite, then I've got the 10 tips for you. Now we're going to start with tip number 10, which is to avoid the pressure. And in summer trout fishing, there are so many more people out. The weather's so nice. It's sunny. You got longer days. There's going to be a lot more pressure on the trout, which means you have to figure out tactics and ways to avoid the pressure and get on trout that haven't been as pressured. And some of those things are going to be having to get up earlier, changing more baits, maybe having to hike in farther to go find some trout up creeks, streams, maybe in high mountain lakes, and just getting to the lake and just trying to find different spots and fishing different techniques and things to just get away from everybody else. And sometimes all it takes is just to get away from the pressure and get away from everybody. Now, tip number 9 is for all those anglers that love that summer troll, and that is to start using chrome, whether it's flashers, spinners, any types of baits that you got behind the boat that you're trolling with. It's going to be chrome, and more chrome. Now, when you're fishing silvery chrome or gold baits, you typically fish gold in the morning and on cloudier days, but you fish silver and chrome on those sunnier days because the fish can see it from farther away. It blings in the water and they just attack the baits with that chromy bling bling. So in the early summertime, as you're starting to get warmer days, more sunlight out on the water and more water clarity, you're gonna want to switch your trolling tactics to fishing more chrome and more silver bling behind your flashers, behind your dodgers, behind that action to get the trout bites. Now, tip number 8 is to know that it is night crawler season. As that water and the weather starts to warm up, night crawlers is a perfect bait and one of the best baits in the early summertime, transitioning into the summertime, that you should be utilizing on all bodies of water. And in the early summertime, it's one of the best versatile baits that you can take with you wherever you go. And especially when you have to avoid pressure and hike in a long ways, having those night crawlers could be the biggest difference between a slow day and a really good day. Now, like tip number 8, we talked about bait and night crawlers. Tip number 7 also has to do with bait and scent, and that is to go garlic. As we said with night crawlers, trout can smell those from a long ways away, and that goes with garlic baits as well, and garlic scents. Garlic is probably the best scent and scented bait that you can utilize, whether you're fishing power bait, whether you're fishing night crawlers and you add a little garlic scent to them, or you're tipping baits behind the trolling gear that you have. Garlic should be one of your go-tos every single time. It just flat out is consistent and catches a lot of stock trout. And make sure you don't leave your bottle of garlic scent in a hot car or it is going to stink your entire car up. Don't ask me how I know. Now, tip number 6 is to speed things up, whether that's trolling, whether that's casting speed. You want to speed up your retrieves and your presentations in front of the trout. Now, unlike the winter trout fishing season, when you want to have a slower presentation because the fish are a little bit more lethargic, they're not as aggressive on the bite. When the temperature and the water starts to warm up, the trout are going to be much more aggressive, which means they're going to go after big baits and they're going to go after lots of flash and they're going to go after things that are much faster in the water and presented in front of them, whether it's plugs, whether it's wedding rings, anything trolled behind the boat, but also spinners. You want to speed things up, get that thump, get that vibration from your baits, and get the attention of the trout for those big takedowns and big strikes. Now, in that early summer time frame, you're going to have to play with your different speeds and your casting speed and retrieves to figure out what it is that the trout may particularly like that day. day. As you're transitioning from spring into summer, it's going to change a lot. But when you find that right speed that you're either trolling or casting, it is going to be an awesome day of fishing. Now, tip number 5 also has to do with baits, and that is to start sizing up your baits. Again, this is a little bit more opposite of winter and colder water trout fishing. When you have colder waters, you want to size down your presentations because the fish aren't as aggressive. Now, in that early summer time frame, you're going to start to see a shift where the trout go from maybe a little bit smaller baits into a little bit more medium-sized baits into baits that are a lot larger. With the bigger baits, you're going to get bigger hookups and bigger takedowns on any body of water. So as you get out there, pay very close attention to the size of bait that you're fishing, what the fish like, what others are doing around you, and you're going to be able to find that perfect bait size for the conditions that you're fishing and get some really big bites and even bigger bites than everybody else. Now, tip number 4 is something that I've been doing over the last couple years that has paid dividends for me, which is to start trout fishing right after big rainstorms or when there's a little bit of rain. Now, when you're transitioning from spring into summer trout fishing, you're going to start having days with less rain. And in my home state of Oregon, when we start to see the transition where we're having much more warmer days or stretches where there's less days of rain, that's what I'm queuing in on for that early summer trout fishing bite. But you could also have those days where you're going to have sprinkled in rain, and the trout absolutely go nuts on the bite, especially right after rain. So one, the rain brings some colder water into the body of water that you're fishing, and it's going to get those trout a little bit more aggressive and on the bite. It's also going to color the water up a little bit, add some more nutrients into the water so they're going to be more active. And then also for stock trout, the rain when it hits the top can be like when you throw pellets at the trout at the hatchery when those rain droplets come down. So fishing right after the rain droplets or it rains can be one of the most deadly and one of the most effective times to get out trout fishing. Now, tip number 3 is to start fishing earlier, and with longer days where you're gonna have more daylight, the sun is starting to rise you in the 5 a.m. time frame. This is the start of the transition to start fishing from later in the mid-morning to earlier in the morning to get on the bite. Now, when I am in transition and I'm going into some early summer trout fishing, I want to be the first person in the body of water that I'm fishing. So I'm gonna get up very early. It might mean you have to be there before the sun rises to get to the spot that you want to fish, but that's going to pay dividends in the long haul because first, you're going to have a shot at those fish. If they're aggressive and they're feeding on the top water or you're seeing them surface, it's going to give you the best advantage and opportunity to figure out what bait, what technique, and what tactics to use to go after the trout. But also, when you have that early summer trout fishing, the bite is going to die off and be much slower earlier in the day. So say 11 or noon, when the bite slows down, your bite window is going to maybe shorten up, or it might just be those few early hours in the morning. So by getting there first, you're giving yourself the best opportunity and best advantage over all the other anglers. And if you really want to get to your spot early, feel free to camp out there and spend the night in your fishing hole or near that area so you can get first crack at the fish. But be careful when you go out of your tent that you don't run right into the river as you're trying to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. Now, tip number 2 is something as an angler you're going to learn more and more about and figure out where the fish aren't and are when it comes to early summer trout fishing. So tip number 2 is to look for those deeper holes and start fishing in those deeper holes in the body of water that you're fishing. With warmer weather and warmer waters, the trout are going to be less in the shallow water and more going into the deeper water because A, the water's starting to warm up, they want to go into the cooler water, it's going to have more oxygen, they're going to be sitting above or below the thermocline, and there's going to be more food in those colder water areas, especially when there's flowing, moving water and say in inlets and little creeks and stream areas, and you're going to want to focus your time on those deeper holes because the trout are more likely going to be hanging out in those deeper holes than on any part of the body of water. And when you realize that the fish are starting to move out into those deeper holes, that's going to put you on a path for success and even catch your personal best back-to-back casts. Now that we've gone through tips 2 through 10, what's tip number 1? Well, that's going to be to watch for the bug hatch. Now, before it gets uber hot in the summer, you're going to want to pay very close attention to when the bug hatch starts in that early summer time frame when the weather's starting to warm up, because that's going to indicate a couple things, including topwater bites, what flies you should use for fly fishing, if it truly is a topwater bite and you can use a bobber with a bait just below it, or you can get out there and cast some spinners and absolutely crush them from the bank or a boat. So one of the best indicators of how the fishing is going to go and what the fish are liking or what they're going after and feeding on is that fly hatch. So pay very close attention to it, but you have to be very careful when the bug hatches out to keep your mouth shut when you're fishing, or you're going to have a mouthful of flies after every trip out. Don't ask me how I know. And there you guys have it, the top 10 early summer trout fishing tip. And if you guys got some great information out of today's video, smash the thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, and as always, you guys, the outdoors is a gift, share it with others.